Hi, this is Sitagiri, also known as Tribal Bling on Instagram, and today I've decided to document all the shawls that I make, because that's basically what I knit. I am a shawl knitter. I do knit the odd garments, but it's not really my thing. Sweaters, I love knitting socks actually in between shawls, but basically I love knitting shawls. They're like a big piece of fabric that you can manipulate and drape, and they're just wonderful to wear. I've always been a shawl wearer, but long before I was a shawl knitter. But with the wonderful designers that are out there making shawls, designing shawls for knitwear, I was inspired initially, probably about 8 years or so ago, by our most favorite shawl designer, Stephen West. And the very first shawl I knitted by Stephen is the Speckle and Pop. And wow, that was quite an exciting journey. I really enjoyed that, and I had just at that time started hand dyeing my own yarn, which was another great adventure in colour. I watched a few videos on YouTube and it looked really easy. I couldn't believe how easy it was. So I gave it a try and it was extremely easy. It was amazing. So I started using my own hand-dyed yarns. I love pure wool, pure fibres, mohair, silk, cashmere, merino, which we have a lot of here. I live in South Africa and we have a lot of wool here. Most of it unfortunately gets exported, but we do have pure wool available to us, not commercially, but we can buy natural undyed wool and dye it up. We also have a large amount of mohair available to us here. So yeah, I use these natural fibers. I do a lot of my own dyeing, although I don't dye everything that I knit with. I support the local indie dyers that have sprung up. There are quite a few that we have, and they do a great job. And sometimes it's just easier when you see such a gorgeous, exciting colorway that you just want to jump in and use it. So I started knitting a long, long time ago. I can't even remember when I really started. I just remember knitting. Probably around the age of 7, my sister was born, and I do remember knitting her booties. And you know, that's not really the simplest thing to knit, but I managed it somehow. And I've partaken in many different textile and stitch crafts all throughout my life. I did a lot of sewing as well as a teenager, but my knitting was always with me. I remember taking my knitting to school when I was in high school and sitting on the steps, rolling up my skirt and tanning my legs and knitting. I was the only one that was knitting. Nobody else was knitting at that stage. When I left school, I went to college in Durban. I don't live there anymore, but that's where I come from, and I studied textile design. That was very interesting. I learned all sorts of different techniques of dyeing and tie-dyeing and wax resist and how to plot out and silk screen textiles in repeats. And once I'd learned that, well, I just couldn't stop experimenting. I would make a lot of my own clothing. I would do a lot of my own dyeing of the textiles, which led me pretty soon into my first business, which was hand dyeing and block printing textiles, and then making them into garments, which I would sell. Now, the dyeing at that stage I used to do in huge pots over the fire. Fortunately, I don't have any pictures of that anymore, but I would love to have kept that. And that was fun. It was a lot of work, but it didn't really bother me because I really was just so excited at each step of the way. I was learning something new. So I jumped into the textile arts, let's say, and I had a few businesses over the years selling stretch cotton lycra when it first came out. I think that was in the 80s. And the first kind of yoga gear or gym gear, as it was known in those days. And I had a business called Cosmic Clothing, and I used to print images that I would photographically transfer onto silkscreen and screen them onto fabric of suns and moons and stars and cherubs, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed that. It was a lot of work. But all the while, there was always some knitting going on. At that stage, I was knitting garments. I was knitting myself sweaters. I was knitting my daughter sweaters. And generally, just in my spare time, I was doing a lot of knitting. Now, this is some 35 odd years later, and I've left the textile art behind, and I've jumped into the fibre art. So I'd like to share with you my journey in the fibre arts, and I've chose to call my podcast The Shawl Knitter, because that's really what I am. I've probably knitted close to 300 or 400 shawls in the past 10 years. I've knitted many over and over again, adapting and changing many different aspects of them. Some of them are just so gorgeous that I just love to knit them as is, but I always add color, many more colors normally than is required. And I'm not actually a planner per se, I just love colors. So I will start out with a set of colors that I intend to use, and I would just get going. Then I would have all the rest of my colors in a basket next to me, and something would just catch my eye, and just in an instant I would decide to change course and to use a new color. Put it in, carry on knitting, and just get very excited until I could get to the next color. So I'm quite a prolific knitter. I knit a lot. I probably knit 8 to 10 hours a day at the moment. I take every chance I can to knit. I have different knitting projects that go everywhere with me. As I say to many people, I never wait, I knit. I really don't like waiting. It's not something I do. I'm very much an on-time person, but I have to wait quite a lot in many different aspects of my life. And knitting has really taught me patience, and I just fill the time up with stitches, and I absolutely love it. The past 12 years, pre-COVID, I've been doing a lot of traveling, mostly in India, where I settled down for some time. And I was also involved in many different crafts and arts in India, and knitting was there with me too. So I'd like to welcome you to this podcast. Let's see how it goes. I intend to show you my shawls and give you a bit of details on how I made them and what I used and where the yarn comes from and what my inspiration is. And let's see how it evolves. I sell all my work, and sometimes it's a bit hard for me to let them go, but mostly it's not really a problem, and I have a lot of friends who support me, so I often get to see my shawls years later, and that really brings me much joy. Today I'm wearing a rather gorgeous and just off the blocking Slipstravaganza by Stephen West. This is the third one that I've made. The first two I have sold, and this one is for sale, but I will just give it a little spin. I'll wear it today at least and just feel it. I do love it. I think this one could possibly become mine, although I say that a lot, and I'll say, oh, today I'm going to wear the shawl and perhaps it'll become mine, and then somebody will see me wearing it, and then it's not mine anymore. They will want it and I will part with it, and yeah, that's fine. But this one is, it's very moody, it's quite dark, it's not really the usual colors that I would use, but I have incorporated loads of colours, loads of different details, mohair in these middle sections. I think you can see it's a bit see-through there. This is also a dark burgundy mohair, and the rest is pure merino. Oh, there's a little bit of linen and merino in here as well. So it's very light and airy, you know. It is a very large shawl, but because of the gauge, it's knitted on a 4mm needle. So the stitches are quite loose and it drapes beautifully. And it's a very big shawl, but it's not that heavy because of the drape and the lightness of the yarn. So there you go. It's probably too big for me to show you the whole thing over the screen, but it's rather gorgeous, and this is the first shawl that I'll show you today. I'm also knitting a shawl at the moment. It's one that I've already knitted two of, and it's by Jorge Locatelli from Argentina. I do like her shawls. She has wonderful designs. And this one is called the Frank Shawl. It's very simple construction. On my needles at the moment, you cannot really see. I mean, I'm still busy in a row, but it's three sort of triangular wedges that are knitted separately, and then you join them together by knitting them together, and they have the most beautiful drape. It's a wonderful, wonderful shawl, and this is an order that I have for a friend of a friend, and the yarn has been custom dyed for me. At the moment I'm battling a bit to get my yarn base that I normally use here in South Africa. There's a bit of a shortage. So I got another local, wonderful local yarn dyer called S. Teresa. She does beautiful colours. And I sent her some colour swatches, just from colour charts basically. And she's dyed me up some great intense colours. This lovely purple. And this is sort of like a rusty brown. And then there's a speckled grey, which has sort of pinkish plum dots of speckles in it. There's a fourth colour which ties in very nicely, and that is like a lovely plum. It's beautiful plum. It's a pink, but it's a plum pink. So at the moment I've started the first wedge with the rust, and then I've moved into the purple, and then throughout the whole shawl there's some rows of holes, lace holes, separating the different bands. So I've decided to use the light grey for that. This is the first triangle. Then the third triangle, I haven't really thought of yet what colour to use, but the plum will come in somewhere. When the time is right, it's sitting here and it's waiting to be used. This is a pure merino fingering weight, and I'm using a 3.75 needle. Of course, it's my favorite needle, the lace tip metal chiagus with this beautiful red cord. Fortunately, I couldn't afford to actually buy a full set, as we have to import everything into South Africa, and the importation and the customs costs are very, very high. So I treat myself once in a while to a set of chiagus, especially for knitting my shawls, because they are just the best. And I'm a great believer in having the right tools for the job. So, you know, if you use a tool that's difficult, you're not going to enjoy your work. You're going to battle, you're going to fight with it. And I teach knitting techniques as well. And what I say to my students, get the best needles that you can afford from the start. Then you will love the craft. You will love what you do. You won't be fighting against it. Your stitches won't be sticking. Your cable won't be twisting. And you will really enjoy what you do. And also that the needles should feel like part of your hands. You know, get to grips with them. Get them in your hands. Feel them. Use them like extra fingers. They will work very well for you that way. And you will get a good basic knowledge of knitting. So I might share some of my knitting tips on this this podcast as well. I haven't decided yet exactly what to do. I did have a YouTube channel called Sita Giri Knits. My name is Sita, by the way. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Sita Giri. But I had the most terrible camera, and I am actually going to delete completely the first video that I posted there, and I'm going to change the name to the Shawl Knitter. So you can find me on Instagram. I document all my knitting and a lot of my life as well on Instagram. My name on Instagram is Tribal Bling. It's one word. I'll put it in the show notes. And I also have a Tribal Bling page on Facebook, but I don't really use it that much. I use my personal page on Facebook, but I won't share that right now. So if you're watching this, thanks so much. You know, I'm very new to this whole podcasting, video making story, and I'm sure I'll get better at it as I go along, but I'm going to do my best to find the right spot and to let the light be good and to be able to show you lots of interesting things. So, yeah, let's see how this one goes, and if I'm happy with it, then I'll be putting out some more. So take care, have a lovely weekend. It's Sunday here. I live on the southern coast of South Africa in a little village called Sedgefield. It's really beautiful. It's between some lakes and some small mountains and the ocean. And there's lots of bird life here, and the sea is beautifully warm, and even though it's winter right now, we're having the most amazing temperatures in the upper 20s. So being outdoors is really wonderful. I think next time I should probably block off the door behind me that's pouring in all the sunlight, but I'll do my best. So I'll say thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this one. Take care.